Good afternoon, Westwood, and welcome to the Wolverine Report, episode 33. Joined as always by my co-host, Evan Cardimino, Charlotte Lynch, our technical director, Marie Fiscaldo, social media, and I am Morgan Donahue. Folks, today we have a very special guest, a member of the 1979 class at Westwood High School, probably one of the most memorable graduation classes when it comes to the athletes, championships, everything all together, but also amazing family in Westwood, the Clement family. When you think of the sports coverage back in the 70s and 80s, Charley Clement, as well as one of the most amazing people in the high school for many, many years, Betty Clement, the school nurse. We are joined by Barb Clement Reilly, the daughter of Charley and Betty, and we are delighted to have you, Barb. How are you? And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for including me. Just for the record, it's Clement, like inclement weather,
Yes.
I always like to say. And I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm looking at all the beautiful hats and the logos, and it's just bringing back so many happy memories just thinking about Westwood.
Yep, absolutely. The first question I have for you is, when you think about Westwood, how special was it for you to grow up in the town of Westwood? And, what were some of your earliest memories growing up in Westwood?
Well, I think kids, as a rule, don't always appreciate and know at the time. You're just so young. It is what it is, and you don't know any different. And it gets sweeter and more special as you go. But I knew I was happy, and I knew I loved it, and I knew I was lucky. But I couldn't articulate it as well as I can now. And I think about growing up, my biggest memories were living on Lakeshore Drive and walking to school. I didn't take a bus. I walked and had a group of friends on Lakeshore Drive, and it was the time when you could go out after school and you played games and, fresh air, and you just did a lot of things together with friends. It was really special. No videos, no staying in. It was, you made your own fun, and you got called in when it was dinner time. And my memories are, Buckmaster Pond and those friends that are right in the neighborhood, the really tight community.
Yeah, different time where outdoors, spending time with friends, and being together. You'd mentioned Burgess Ave earlier, and I always think about that hill, and running up that hill.
Me too.
It's a good, I feel like a good 3/4 of a mile. If you really want to know how good your endurance levels are, run up Burgess Ave.
Yeah, never did that.
Great area, Bubbling Brook, not too far from there. Was that around back then, or?
Yes, and many of my friends worked there. I did not, but I would be at Bubbling Brook a lot. And, there was, you guys probably don't remember, I can't remember what it's called now. Is it, Velos or the Toast Office?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, that was another place we used to go. And in the old days, but it was always out walking, sports. I played sports too. I played field hockey. I did track. You were just with people a lot. You were with your community or your neighbors, and it was just really tight. I always remember feeling very supported and very much like we were together all the time. Those are my memories. I only remember a lot of people in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Including family, but friends too.
And of those, go ahead.
I was going to say, you ended up playing sports at Westwood High School in the 70s, and what a time to play sports. There were some legends we've had on the podcast: Kathy Delaney-Smith, the Fabianos, Bill Irvine, Dave Whalen, Jackie McMullen, who we haven't had on the podcast, but a legend in her own right. What was it like going to high school at Westwood High School in the 70s?
Well, if you can remember back then, girls' sports were just kicking in. And I was very well aware. Obviously, my dad was very involved in sports. My family were very athletic. I was the youngest of 4 children. My 2 brothers were in sports. My brother Gary was an exceptional hockey player. My brother David played every sport. He was exceptional in basketball. And I just grew up thinking that was the way it should be. As soon as I could do it, I did it. I was not very good. I worked really hard at it, and I did my very best, but I can tell you it was super special to be a part of it, and it was really kind of fun. I don't think we as girls were as serious about it back then as girls are now. When I look back, we were probably more interested in the fact that field hockey was right next to the football field, and we watched all the guys, and most of them were our friends, and we'd wave and talk. Our field hockey team was not known to be very good. Thankfully, it got much, much better, but our coaches were exceptional. Liz Rice, an amazing field hockey coach. Some of my best friends were still.
Yeah.
that I made on the field hockey team. I think that was a very special time because we were all together as a team, good or bad. Thankfully, the football team was outrageously great.
Yeah.
Didn't miss a game.
Yeah.
It was a thing to go to the games.
Yeah.
Our basketball team was exceptional.
Yeah.
I would go to every game.
Yeah.
Every away game, every home game, baseball, basketball, field hockey, everything.
That's incredible. And like we were saying, 1979 class, tremendous with athletes. You know, you have Ann Deacon, Michael Fabiano was a tremendous running back, you know, in that class. Denise Shanning, tremendous, leader and, basketball player. And they were on that 1979 state championship. You know, how important and exciting was that for the high school at that time? That was, coming back into town on fire trucks and, the cop cars. The experience gives me chills, but you were around, then and able to see it. What was that like?
The camaraderie and the pride for the town was pretty special. I remember, though, starting even before 79, my brother he graduated before me in 75 or 76. And it was like that for basketball. So I was kind of feeling that, the spine tingling feel and like this is special to go watch and root for your team and have those kind of championships and have your team written about and go and celebrate afterwards and the big parades. And when it happened, when it was really clear that the girls' team was something outrageously special. Yeah. And Kathy, I was on the freshman basketball team, but Kathy was building such a solid team, and I ended up focusing on field hockey. I have to say, watching that team, Ann Deacon, Jackie McMullen playing, with Jackie McMullen. I was there when Jackie tried out for the very first time. It was pretty amazing. Yeah. She had never played before. Yeah. She was imagine never playing before and picking up basketball then and then making varsity and then going off and doing what she was doing.
And then playing in college.
She was incredible. Yeah. I mean, she was just such a natural. And watching it, and you look back now and you say, wow, I was there when that happened, and wow, that was pretty special. But it was a team. And I'm going to go back. We're mentioning names. Yeah. But it was everybody together. Yeah. And that was what made it so cool. Even though we were a terrible field hockey team, it was everybody together. It was camaraderie. It was pride. It was special. Yeah. And I think that is sort of where you look back at Westwood, and it's less about the games that you remember, and it's more about that community feel that was just so tight. Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing that now come back. Yeah. Like the winter season teams we covered, they were like families, and we'll do post-game interviews, and we don't hear I or me. We hear we, and we hear how special it is to have so-and-so as their teammate and how they make it easy for them. And it's awesome because that's what I've said to Kathy too, is the 70s is what created the culture here in Westwood for sports. The ultra competitiveness, but the also family aspect of the team and the camaraderie. And it is still very much alive. Sometimes, it will take, it'll have ebbs and flows, but this year we've really seen it come back where they have each other's backs. And, when we talk to the seniors on senior night, they talk about how special it is to be out there together with their teammates that they've played with their whole life. And it's awesome because it would probably make, anyone that's gone through Westwood High School proud because it reminds them of their graduation classes and their teammates.
Well, it's really great that it's more than just the team too. I mean, I think about the teams and I think about the ones I was on, but I also think about the teams I wasn't on and how much I enjoyed being a part of watching it and going. And I think that's true of all. But I also think the well-roundedness of the athletes, like if you were to talk about any of the ones we're discussing from my, 4 years at Westwood High School and earlier, they were super intelligent. Yeah. They were in other things. They were in theater, some of them. Some of them were selected to go to some great schools, not just for sports, but because that they had the test scores to get in. And you think about that too. There's so much about that group that was good people, really smart, participated in community, and were also incredible athletes to watch and be a part of that. That whole thing was incredible. Again, I can't say that at the time. I know now what I know that I didn't know then, and it was just really magical to be a part of it. When I talk to some people now in other towns, you know, as you get out into the world, you start talking to other people, and they cannot believe when we talk about Westwood that we're all still so close, or that we have these happy memories, or that high school friends are some of the best friends we've ever had.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah. When you look at your experience, and clearly it was an amazing and impactful experience, did that create a perspective for you when your children were going into high school and in high school to make sure that they appreciated it, you know, in the moment where they don't, you know, 20 years go by and then they feel like, damn, that was a really good time. You know, does that perspective as a parent, do you give reminders to your kids to, you know, to make sure they're reminding themselves how special that time is in their life?
Well, I did, and I tried really hard to set that up for them and say that, you know, take advantage of this because this is going to be very special. And there are some things that are really different socially that make that impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, we played sports teams that were local all the time. We didn't have all the travel teams that exist today. I think that there's also, you know, remembering the towns and the streets that I told you that I grew up on, our homes were like this.
Yeah.
We heard conversations from other families, right?
Yep.
And that is not necessarily the same. And in the place where we moved to, I would just say that it was almost impossible to see that happen because you didn't have the walk to school with your friends. You didn't have that, you know, we're always home on the weekends and our time together as the teammate that we just played with on Friday, we're going to hang with them on Saturday.
Yeah.
There is a very different world for our kids, and my kids didn't have the same high school experience because everything was travel or far away or not close in the streets that we lived in. And I think that that's not the town. I think it's society as a whole today.
I agree. And I completely relate to what you said too, because I live in the maze and the houses are on top of each other. Like sometimes when I have people at my house, I go, shh. And like, because I got a neighbor like 10 feet to the left of my house, a neighbor 10 feet to the right, you know, but that's a great thing because we're all right at, you know, we all know each other very, very well. We all support each other. It's like a community within the community. And people are prideful of the areas they are like from in Westwood. You know, people love the Sling. They love the Slingtown, you know, card they play, you know, and then.
I tell you the debates I've had over that with my high school friends as recently as 6 months ago. No, it still goes on. Yeah. But I think that over time you find your peeps, and you know, I think my kids found a very good. One of them was very athletic and into, you know, sports or group things, and another one wasn't. And I think for them, college was probably a little tighter. I think my generation of Westwoodites, and maybe as you're saying, some of the more recent ones, I think Westwood is just really unique. I hear it everywhere I go. Westwood is just really unique.
Yeah. So I used to coach hockey, and I used to say to the kids to kind of, you know, calm them down in the big games. I would say, guys, just remember there's something special here, and you guys, you know, are making some amazing memories with some of the best friends you'll have the rest of your life. And this is a use case here, folks. Literally, still best friends with her closest friends at Westwood High School. So. I'm not blowing smoke when I would say that, you know, because a lot of them are going to be in your wedding someday. And a lot of them you're going to be keeping in touch with for the rest of your life because these are some of the most special memories. And when you are chasing after your goals on a team, whether it's, you know, or even, you know, arts or sciences, any organization, and you achieve them together, that is so that is such a big part of your development and, you know, impactful. So. Great use case.
If I could tell you, if I looked at my phone right now in the text, guys and girls, my group is my close group is made up of 8 guy friends and 6 other girlfriends. Yeah. And we are together and if we're not physically together, we text each other constantly. And in good times and bad. And let's just face it, they're in high school they were good and bad, and in life in general they were good and bad. And the use case you just mentioned is I would be lost without that group of friends.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's some good text messages on the latest Wolverine Report episodes because we've been covering the 70s. It's our favorite decade so far.
Well, it is mine too. It is mine too. And I would just say that, you know, when we're wrapping up the 70s, I think that I had the good benefit, and I'm sure a lot of the kids do too, is when you have siblings, which I was very lucky to be very close with my siblings, those siblings gave me the peek into it beforehand because I was the youngest, and I had a stretch of people and all my brother's friends that you've mentioned, like Dave Rice and Bill Irvin and Dave Whalen. Yeah. I still stay in touch with all of my brother's friends. And I think that's the thing about Westwood. It's not just your classmates. Yeah. It's your community.
Special siblings in your family. Dave was telling me when his son Pat got drafted, one of the first people he called to let them know was your brother. And just an amazing memory. And, that's pretty cool. Calling your high school, one of your high school best friends is that first phone call. I mean, just another testament to the relationships that are built through Westwood.
Did he also tell you that I used to make brownies and serve them Kool-Aid for poker games at my house? I bet he didn't tell you that one.
That is awesome.
Under the guise of my brother was babysitting for me, I became their waitress. Yeah, no, that is surprised he left that one out.
Stories like that are what make Westwood, Westwood is just, everyone's got funny stories. I mean, Ann Heffron told a good one, when we had her on the podcast. One of the questions we like to ask alumni, and you were an athlete, you played basketball your freshman year and you played field hockey for 4 years, is before you got into high school, we see a common theme that there were players that the student athletes looked up to, that they had seen like in middle school, and they're like, that person is just amazing. They're my hero. And I'm sure your siblings were heroes of yours, no question about it. They were heroes of mine too. But who were some of your heroes before you even got into high school and put a uniform on, where you wanted to emulate their confidence or their style of play?
Well, the first one that comes to mind, and you may have heard her name, was Carol Mather. Yeah. Do you remember Carol?
So I do. Amazing basketball. One thing that I don't think enough people know in Westwood is how good of an athlete her father was. Her father played for the 1960 Olympic U.S. hockey team. Amazing.
I didn't know that until you had mentioned it to me. And what's really striking about that is the humble nature of Carol. Yeah. She wouldn't have talked about that. Yeah. She didn't, brag or boast, but she was pretty incredible. Yeah. I looked to my class. I really looked up to Ann Deacon. Yeah. I really looked up to Denise Shanning. Jackie McMullen was one we talked about. But you have to remember there weren't a lot of great girls teams. The girls were just kicking into gear right before, like 4 or 5 years before I started, so there wasn't a lot. But Carol always comes to mind for me because Carol was one of those people that she was a good person and a good athlete.
I heard she's good at everything she does. I hear she's an amazing golfer. Mm-hmm. She was a terrific basketball player. She's one of the first names that Kathy will say when she talks about Westwood is, Carol Mather, and I think they keep very much in touch.
She's also one of the funniest people you'll ever talk to.
We gotta get her on. Carol, if you're watching,
she's outstanding in every single way. Val Irvin comes to mind. Val was an excellent athlete, and also just a really kind person. Yeah. There were some special people ahead of me.
I love that you mentioned Val, because then it reminds me of a lot of these special people stayed in Westwood. Val did, and I was captains with her son on the football team. And then the Fabianos, good friends with Joe Fabiano, and great family in Westwood. And there's so many too. Like one of my best friends, Dan McGinnis. Mary McGinnis is his aunt. Mm-hmm. Dave McGinnis, Muggsy, his father. Yep. So these are all these are 70s legends. When it comes to Westwood, and I, some of them I didn't even know till a couple weeks ago. Like Monroe, Kelly Monroe was in my was in my grade, and her father and I think uncles were in the 70s. And Frank Jacobs, his daughter Allison Jacobs, and Frank was 74. So a little ahead of the time, but his daughter Allison was a classmate of mine. So really cool to kind of solve these, not solve, but like to uncover some of these connections to the town.
Well, the triplets were pretty special.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned the Fabianos. They were I was friends with Jimmy. I went to all of his games, every single one of them. Even the ones that weren't in Westwood when he was in the summer league. I went to that. Incredible. And followed him around. But the girls, they're all super sweet, super talented, and to this day, like I follow them all. I don't see them often, but I follow them, and I think that they're remarkable in how they've lived their lives. And because this is Westwood is 1 degree of separation. My dad ended up working with Joe Fabiano later in his career.
Incredible.
So it's really funny. We all kind of stick together somehow.
Yeah, and you mentioned your father. Can you tell the viewers at home a little bit about how your dad got his start in writing the Westwood Beat?
Well, none of us knew he was a writer, to be honest with you, but we all knew he was really athletic. And, by way of background, my parents came from Dedham. All of my dad's brothers were into sports. They were all-star athletes, all of them. My father was an all-star athlete. He made the Hall of Fame. I always knew he was into sports. My uncle became the voice of the Bruins. Yeah. My other uncle, was really involved in town sports in Dedham. Did I think my dad could write? No, I thought he was great in business. The fact that he ever went and, of course, sat at his kitchen table and just kept writing and writing and writing and became involved with the Westwood Beat was shocking to me.
Yeah.
He went to every game. He was in the boosters. And then all of a sudden he had this thing where he goes, there's an opportunity for me to do the Westwood sports column. I'd have to be really engaged in all the sports. I have to make time from work to go to them all. Yeah. But I'm going to do that. And then Thursday nights, I'm going to write it and I'm going to drive it over to the daily transcript, the Dedham transcript, and submit my, in those days, there was no computer with email. You'd have to get in the car and drive it.
Yeah.
Every Thursday night. Yeah. And then he did this for years. And I was shocked, not surprised about him doing anything with sports.
Was that on the typewriter too?
He did it by hand.
By hand. So funny story that you mentioned is Jackie actually got her start a little bit in high school because she wanted more coverage, and Frank Wall from Norwood said, if you write it, we'll print it. If it sucks, we won't print it. And she would handwrite it. Frank would drive to the high school and pick it up. So like,
I'm not kidding you. You think about these things now and you're like, how did you do that?
It's incredible. But I've talked to, and one of the favorite things is that I've done is just catching up with alumni. And in the 70s is no question one of the most special decades. And I've been lucky enough to talk to a lot of them. And your dad is beloved, your mom as well. And the athletes, they could have had just like say hockey, for example. They could have had a goal on the doorstep, nothing pretty. They just put it in the net. But your dad could make it sound like it was Game 7 of the winning the Stanley Cup championship, and he cared about these kids, and he made such an impression on them that it's 50 plus years later, and they're still talking about the impact that he had on them. Did you know at that time the type of impact he was having on the kids then? Was kind of curious. And then did he cover any of the games you played in? And if so, how special was that?
I'll start with, I did know back then.
Yeah.
Because I knew my dad and we would talk about it a lot. I was really, being the youngest and my older siblings were already out of the house.
Yeah.
I had a lot of time to spend with my parents, and especially during his days of writing. And I, as you grow, you start to, with that phase in life where you start paying attention to everything else. It's not just all about you. Yeah. But I do recall conversations with my dad about why he was doing it. What the most brilliant thing that I learned in watching this was little things can make a big impact. I took that away from what he was doing because he would talk about anybody can write about the big stuff. Anybody can write about the championship. Yeah. But these kids, they're doing great things and they're working hard, and I want them to be recognized for that. And he really cared about the small moments, and he also really cared about giving a spotlight to people who may not always get the spotlight. The funny thing is, he refused to write about me. He would not write about anything that I did. And I kind of joked with him once. I said, Dad, I never see my name in there, but you write about all my friends. Jeff Sibilia will come up to me and tell me, oh, look at what your dad wrote about me. Yeah. Jack Caravan will come up and tell him about the play he made on the football field. Every kid I knew would come up to me and talk about my dad writing about them. Yeah. I would joke about him like, hey, do you remember I played too? Yeah. And he would say, yeah. You already know how I feel about you.
I was gonna say none of them can call him dad.
Yeah, right.
And that's the truest luckiest person, to be able to call him dad.
But he did care about all that.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that, in the spirit of your question, the impact that's made, I knew it was being made at the time.
Yeah.
I cannot believe all these years later, people still talk about it. Yeah. I get it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. My dad. My mom, same thing, just in a different way. Yeah. Usually it was people who were sick or were going to her because they just weren't feeling great. And my mom cared so much about people. I would hear about it all the time. Yeah. And I think I'm one of the luckiest people that ever came out of Westwood to have parents like that. I still to this day think I was blessed.
What an amazing example. They set. That's pretty cool. Question I have too is, so what was the dynamic back then? Was this a full-time job for Dad, or did he have other jobs to kind of balance all this? What was that dynamic like?
Yeah, he was working. My dad ended up being at that time. Yeah, he was full-time. Yeah. He happened to carve out the time that he needed to carve out. Luckily, they didn't have remote work like we do now, but he did have as a person who was involved in sales, he had some flexibility to fit it in and then work later. But he was juggling all of that. And both of my parents did all these things outside their full-time jobs. And I think that's one of the things I grew up watching was, you do certain things because you're good at them and you work hard at those, but the time that you give to other people matters as much. Yeah. And I had great role models, to be honest.
Yeah. One thing I was going to say before is Dale Carnegie has a quote, and he says, "The sweetest, most sounding word in the English dictionary is your own name." So,
I believe that to be true.
When you read it in the paper or you hear it on the call, like it's invigorating. And I think the true essence of when someone gives back time to something, gives their time to something, a lot of times, and it seems very common that it doesn't feel like they're giving time, and they're almost more appreciative of what they've gotten from the people they've covered. And I read a beautiful Facebook post that you had, because someone had posted a picture and article of your dad, and you had a beautiful post mentioning in some of his last days, you read some of those scrapbooks and articles to him, and he's kind of in and out of consciousness and whatnot, but the articles he was alert for, and then he'd chime in saying "great kid," or different things like that. Reading some of his own articles, I think that just shows how special that was for him. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to how important that was for him, and as special as it was for the kids, how special it was for him himself?
Well, yeah, I don't know why I decided to go find all the books, in those days, again, it wasn't digital. So we had these, piles of notebooks with all of the clips from the Westwood beat. So, here he's got his articles, and I'm flipping through and I'm reading them, and he's, in that state where we know he's partially there, partially not. Yeah. And what I loved was how much he smiled and perked up at people's names. He didn't forget anything. He didn't forget anyone. And to me, we all learn from things, right? And I tend to learn a lot from watching and observing. And I think what I took away from all that moment that my dad is remembering, articles he wrote years ago, people that you could technically forget them 20, 30, 40 years later. He was so present. He was present in the writing. He was present at the games. You don't do something ever. Don't spend the time. This is a lesson I took away as I watched him lighten up over, oh yeah, that's when Mike Fabiano, he was rushing for that, to block somebody, or, when he was talking about, Jimmy Fabiano doing something, or when he was talking about Ann Deacon, or he remembered everything because he was so present. And you don't do things unless you're really in it. Mm-hmm. Don't just check a box. Yeah. Don't just do it because you said you were going to do it. Only do something if you're really invested in it and it means something to you. That's why you're getting as much out of it. And I have tried so hard to use that lesson because we're all so busy. Yeah. And if I could leave any lesson for everybody, my father wasn't just writing a sports column. I don't think my father ever intended just to write a sports column as much as he loved sports. the thing I always took away from my dad, and it hit me that day, he died 24 hours later.
Yeah.
He did it, and we should all do things because we're really doing something that makes an impact. If we can't be doing it with that intent, then it's really a waste of time.
Yeah.
And I the fact that he retained that to that moment just said it to me in the most potent way I can tell you. And the fact that I would say on a Facebook post 20, 30 years later, oh, today's the anniversary of my dad's death. I miss him. He was such a good guy. And then I get a slew of people commenting, oh, yeah, remember when he wrote this? Yeah. It goes both ways.
It does, yeah.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Do it because it means something, and it means something and lasts with people.
Yeah.
Our teachers did that. Our coaches have done that. My dad did that. We have been blessed to be surrounded by a lot of that.
Absolutely.
And that's what we all should take away when we go do things now. And I try. It's a good lesson to hold on to and remind yourself.
Yeah. I could not agree more. I think people go out and volunteer things. And then when you do find that thing that you don't even feel like you're giving time and it's actually giving back to you, cling on to that, double down on that. Because when you bring passion to something, you can't fake passion. And when you bring that passion to something, it is it brings out the best, and it brings, and it heals. It's got healing power. You know, I tell the Westwood Media folks, I volunteer my time. I'm in tech sales, and it is cutthroat. It is cutthroat business. You know, it's what have you done for me lately? You know, chopping block, all that type of stuff. And it is very healing to be able to go to these games and to talk about, you know, Westwood, things that are very near and dear to me. So, yeah.
And if you're not able to do that, it's best to step aside because you're wasting everybody's time and your own.
100%. You know, you need to be there for the right reasons. You know, and completely agree, because you can tell when people are there and it's just they're wasting time. You know, and it's we
live in a very busy society, and I think focusing to do the right thing is better than trying to do too much.
Yes,
it's taken a long time to realize that, I think, as everybody in this, we just keep adding on and saying yes, 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 and I'll do that. Yeah. But that's the biggest lesson I took in answer to your question. And I really knew in my heart that sports was always my dad's passion. And but I knew more importantly, he really cared about the kids. And as you said to me earlier today, there's so many people that will talk about the teachers or the coaches or the people that were in their life. And you have to imagine it's not just this moment they're remembering it. It's influenced all the days in between. And that goes on. That's sort of like an investment you should be making.
One of the questions we like to ask alumni too, and even current students, is there's a lot of great teachers at Westwood High School, and it's a very important time in a lot of kids' lives. Were there any teachers that were super impactful in your life that were very supportive, or they just, when you look back, you just remember them being a very positive influence on your life that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, Kathy Mulcahy was my social studies teacher. She was a very young teacher. She took an interest in me. She went beyond just teaching me social studies and history. She cared about me and my life, and I could tell that whenever I'd walk into the class, it was not just about she was going to kick into gear and teach. She would ask me how I was doing. She could see when I was struggling with something, and I always felt seen. And those are the kinds of teachers. I could rattle off almost every one of them. I loved school. I loved school. I loved every facet of school. There was very little I didn't love about it. And but Kathy became more of like a friend to me, and friend to my family. And I went to her wedding. I went to a teacher's wedding.
Incredible.
And that's what I mean. Like, she was more than just a great teacher. I could feel myself being seen. It was at a time where I was having a relationship issue, and I didn't know. I didn't tell her about it, but she must have seen it in me. And I think that's the mark of a great teacher, is that they know that when they're teaching somebody, it's not just a subject that they're teaching, but they know that they got to have that person's attention. And she could see something wasn't right with me. And I treasure that. That's another lesson learned, is like, when you're doing a job to teach somebody, you got to meet them where they are. And she was really cautious to try to meet me where I was personally. I think about her. She was pretty special. There were so many. I mean, honestly, I was in student council. I did a lot of things beyond sports.
Oh, yeah.
I was in theater. I really jumped around to try everything in school. So, I mean, I could rattle off a lot of people for you, but she is perhaps the most potent to me.
Sure. And I actually do want to rattle off. So you were busy. You were busy in high school. So
Yes, I was.
I want to rattle off.
no.
Off some of these.
Oh no.
Some of the organizations you were part of. Amazing.
Yeah.
Student council, freshman and junior year, or sophomore, junior year. Vice president. You were the business manager of the yearbook. Student faculty forum, all 4 years. Drama club, all 4 years. Thespian, junior and senior year. Senior class play, one act plays, freshman through senior year. School musical, the pep club, girls basketball your freshman year. Field hockey, sophomore, junior, senior year. No parentheses, junior or sophomore, junior year. Sacred cheese. I don't know what that is, but it was senior year. Student announcer.
Oh yeah.
We'll have to ask, or we'll definitely want to double click on that. Project Green, and then the prom committee. You certainly kept yourself busy. How important was that, and how impactful was it to join organizations, many organizations, and for kids in high school today? Would you give them the advice of trying as many things possible to get as much of an experience possible out of their time at the high school?
Yeah, I actually credit Kathy Delaney for this.
Yeah.
It was it was a pivot moment, and it was a very good lesson. I didn't go beyond the basketball team sophomore year because Kathy was a real hard driving coach. And I think for my freshman or sophomore year, I was named the what are those awards they
superlatives?
give? I got a superlative, which was most sportsmanlike player, I think it was. And while I may have really been a great teammate, the basketball team was at that pivotal moment where they were really only taking the best of the best of the best. And I wasn't the best, and I'll admit it, I wasn't. I loved it, but I was not the best. And I remember at that moment being crushed that I wasn't going to make the basketball team. I'll never forget it. I really wanted to be on the team. And I could tell how bad she felt. She and I were very close. I could tell she felt bad, but I was grateful to her because it made me think, all right, what else can I do?
Yeah.
And I got very involved in all those other things you're talking about, because my whole belief in life is you only get out of life what you put into it. And I didn't want to sit on the sidelines and just do nothing. I wanted to fill that time with something more meaningful. So I kept trying new things. Yeah. And I thank her for that, because those things actually ended up making my career.
Big time.
They were very instrumental and pivotal. And so when you say teachers, I would say it was coaches that were more impactful to me. One, Liz Rice, great at building team. She was so impactful to me on what makes a great teammate. Yeah. And how to use your skills. And I became a great field hockey player. Yeah. I also would tell you that Kathy Delaney, in saying no to me, made me a great something else. Yeah. In track, I love track, and that's more of a solo thing, and I just had to compete with myself. Yeah. All those coaches taught me different things that I've applied to my real life and my career and where I went. But all those things that I did, I would tell anybody who's interested in wanting to get things out of life and test yourself and see where you're good and where you're not, try them. Try them all. So that's why I tried everything. And I ended up finding out where I was good and where I wasn't. And that is a very big thing, to learn what you're not good at.
Yes.
As much as anything else.
Absolutely. And how important is failure?
Critical.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's defined who I am and what I'm great at.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use the word failure. I would just say there were people that were better at me, better at basketball than me, still love it. Still love sports, but I would say that you have to know where to focus. And Kathy gave me that opportunity, and we've talked about it. But after that happened, she and I sat down and chatted.
Yeah, amazing.
And to this day, I worship the ground the woman walks on. We're still friends. Yeah. She's a role model and a leader in a lot of ways. I have to say, you rattled off some things that are really important. The announcer job.
Yeah.
I really like, part of my job today is I stand up and present all the time.
Yeah.
I am in front of crowds of people presenting. I'm in front of small boards presenting. I'm in front of teams. I wouldn't have done that if it weren't for not making the basketball team.
Yeah.
Failing at certain things has told me where I need to work harder.
Yeah.
I think that there's and maybe this is just me, having watched my children with other children. I think there's been a style change in our society that's like being afraid to say no, being afraid to hurt someone, being afraid to say you're cut from this. I don't think anyone should ever be afraid of it. I think you say it nicely. I think you give rationale why, but it allows a new door to open. And it's less about failure and more about sharpening your skills.
Being honest with yourself too. And Kathy used to, in her book, she said that she used to keep tissues at her desk because she had to be honest with the players to tell them what their weaknesses were, and some weren't ready for it. And the fact that you had the leadership to be able to absorb it and to, I'm sure there was a few moments of woe was me, but you put that behind you, and then you looked at the opportunity, and you also didn't let it ruin a relationship because it wasn't, her attacking you. It wasn't, an insult. It was just, her being honest with the assessment of kind of the direction of the team.
Yeah.
So good to both of you. And one thing that she had mentioned, and I would love to get your feedback on, is she would talk about how she kind of held court in the girls' locker room, like her office. And it was like her and Liz Rice had the office, and the girls used to come by and talk shop. And that was part of it, was how Kathy got Jackie to try out. She's like, well, at least we'll get one of the McMullen sisters to play, with Jackie's younger sister. Jackie was like, what? You want me to try out? But Jackie looked up to her. How much do the girls look up to those conversations with Kathy, like someone who was a role model for you at that, time, and just important to be able to just have someone that you could have a conversation with throughout the day that, was well respected.
Well, this is the reason why trying different things, whether it's cultural, art, music, sports, you start to be around teammates or people you interface with or mentors or leaders. And if you are not doing those things, you're missing out on how to learn and grow and change. And the fact we could sit in her office and have discussions and her get to know us and Liz get to know, they were both great. They were very different.
Yeah.
But to have them both help you understand who you are and who you can be, you're not going to get that if you're just going home.
Yeah.
And I just made it a practice to keep trying. And I think having a pair of women who you could look up to, who you respected, who you could, in seeing yourself through their eyes, you could become better at yourself. I really loved that. And I felt that way when I went into the theater too. I had people telling me what I could and couldn't do in the theater.
Yeah.
There's just things that you need to explore and you choose. I keep it with me in my life or I shed it. I tried it and I shed it. And having mentors like that in a community like that was really important. You don't get that in the classroom as much as you get it in athletics or extracurricular.
Something we talk about with failure with our alumni as well is risk taking. You did a lot in high school, and part of, not making the basketball team is saying, I'm going to take a risk and try something new, something out of my comfort zone. How important has that risk taking been, not just in your personal life, but professional life as well?
Well, two things I've taken with me: the team approach. Like you cannot go into business. So I work in marketing, and I cannot lead teams or be a part of a team unless I understand the team concept. And athletics taught me a lot about that. But the other thing is, you graduate from high school with an idea of what you want. You go to college and you push yourself into a chosen path. And you have to learn a little bit more and push yourself, fail a little, challenge yourself, and then go out in the real world. And what I learned, I learned most of that in high school, not college. I learned most of it through all the extracurricular and sports in high school. And I just perfected it in college. And then I went out in the real world and I had a much better sense because I failed in some things. And I wasn't afraid to fail because once you fail and you get up on your own 2 feet, you know you're going to be okay. It's not bad.
Yeah, you're not going to die. It hurts the ego a little bit, but I feel like if you do it more and more, your relationship with it is less, it's less feeling like you got beat up and more, I'm proud of myself for trying.
But it's also shaping. So that's why I hear you say the word fail, and I actually only see it as a refinement of who I am and what I can be doing, or getting to learn it better from experts.
Yes.
Kathy and Liz were experts in certain things. People that I interface with in work are experts in certain things. You learn, and you never stop learning. Yeah. And you just keep changing and growing and pushing. And I consider the word failure. Yeah.
It's a bad label.
To be a more of about a shaping of where you're eventually going to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think you win or you learn. Failure I don't think it has the same label or the same meaning that it might have had years ago, because people are trying new things. They're taking those risks, and if it doesn't work out, they're learning from it. And I think the people who are the best at what they do, they don't make the same mistake twice. And they are continuing to move forward, and they have no problem with rejection. They have no problem with if something doesn't work. They have problems with not trying, and not putting the effort, and not taking a risk, because that's the worst risk of all, is not taking one sometimes.
And I think you just said win. The opposite of win in a sporting event is lose. Yeah. And for me, I hire a lot of people. I've spent a lot of my career interviewing young people and putting them on a team and hiring them in. I have found over the years, as more and more women get into competitive sports, I have seen women do really well in business. Yeah. And that's been a really interesting thing, because I do think sports has helped women understand team concept and competing. Yeah. You have to learn that. But by the way, I celebrate people who are not athletic, and I believe that people who are in other things. So I'm not saying that you can't be great in other avenues like artists or in music or dance or any of those other things. What I think the common thread is, throw yourself into something and try it if you have an interest in it. Yeah. Follow that heart of yours and just keep pushing and finding the thing that you are really good at and that you love, and whether that's athletics or not. And I just happen to be, I'm not in athletics now. Yeah. I'm in business. And I think that all those lessons taught me a lot to do better in the real world outside of high school.
Yeah. And, from talking to many people, one of the first things they say is how successful you've been professionally. You are an executive at one of the top advertising and marketing agencies, in the country, and you are one of the leaders. So it's basically like a team again, and you have to make decisions that are critical to success. How much does that feel like being a team? When it comes to setting goals, chasing after your goals, achieving those goals, but then also the aspect of no one can do it on their own. The aspect of we're wearing the same jersey here, and how much did Westwood help prepare you for the position, that you've been in for many years?
I mean, I lean into Westwood a lot. It's taught me a lot. My family's taught me a lot. My friends and, teachers and coaches taught me a lot. But I think what's hard about business is there's this really weird dual dynamic that you've got to, focus on your own improvement, manage your career, improve your skills, take new challenges and risks. So there's a lot of focus on yourself. Go have your performance review. It's all about you. But you have to act in the way that you are always working on a team. You are working on behalf of a brand that you represent. In my world, I represent brands and businesses, and I'm trying to help coalesce people on the client side and people on my team. So you're constantly in this dual world of me, and team. And you got to be good at floating through both. Yes. Yeah. And knowing when's the time to put the put your self-agenda down and focus on the team, and then put the team away and focus on yourself. You got to be good at that. So the answer to that question is, with that in mind, you have to like know that when you look back at your time in Westwood or your time in all the things I just told you I did, I lean into that all the time.
Yeah.
The second thing I would tell you is that if you are not thinking about everybody else, what's that saying? All boats rise with the tide. If you are not helping other people in your team, if you are not throwing the ball to them, if you are not seeing somebody's got an issue that you should go help them, you will never win.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll never win and succeed. And in business, I feel like I've gotten a lot of great, I've had a lot of great luck because of my team focus.
Yeah. Well, luck doesn't come if you're not working hard, and your team focus. It's I've always found that any luck I've had in like work, it's because of a lot of hard work, and
this is true. My father taught me that if I don't work hard, don't expect anything. So I did learn that from him.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk real quick about another legend, your uncle Don Earl? So he covered the Bruins. Was it for TV 38? How amazing was that? You can still find some clips on YouTube of his call, and what a voice! And it was much more difficult to call games back then because you kind of had to paint the picture. Now, like with the technology where it is, people can see it, so you don't need to be perfectly on top of the timing and all that. You can be off and whatnot. But how amazing was that? To see your uncle calling the big bad Bruins, Bobby Orr. He was calling Bobby Orr games. Incredible. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you for asking about my uncle. It was pretty normal. I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
From the time I was a little girl, I would see my uncle and I would see him on TV, and I just thought that's how it was. Yeah. I didn't know any different. And we would be religious. My father would always go to the games. He had season tickets. My mom would often go with him, I have a funny story about my mom. But my whole thing is our family life revolved around Bruins games. Yeah. On weekends, my family was super close. All the cousins would get together, and we would go to my Uncle Don's house, and we would have cookouts in the summertime, because obviously you couldn't touch my uncle during Bruins season when the games were going on. But all I remember is he was my uncle. Yeah. I didn't think anything of it. Yeah. But as I started to like get out of the house and get out of Westwood, and people would say, "Oh, Don Earl is your uncle," I'd be like, "Oh, is that special?" And I started to realize it was pretty unique and special. Yeah. And my father would bring the Bruins players over. Don Ori used to come over all the time. Johnny Busick and my dad were good friends.
Yeah, incredible.
And I just grew up thinking, oh, this is the way it is. Then I married a man, flip over, my husband's dad was the treasurer for the Red Sox.
Wow.
And they all grew up going to the Red Sox. The two families, we used to joke about our lives as children.
That's perfect.
We knew nothing other than that. That was the way it was. He was a great guy. He had a great voice. It was really interesting to watch him. And he gave up a lot. He traveled a lot. He gave up a lot.
And Dad, too, with games. And, this is when you were in high school, and before. And, you'd mentioned a good point. You said he gave our dad to the community, and Dad, it feels like Dad was dad to a lot of people, but only one person, or four. Yes,
there were four of us. My mom and dad were, I shared my mom and dad with pretty much everybody. And it's kind of cute because so many people love my mom. I recently visited my mom. She's now at Traditions in Dedham. Yeah. And I had some high school friends who had been in to visit her and told me about their visits with her. And I honestly, every time I hear this, I just can't get over how my parents have touched so many people. And we should all aspire to that. Yeah. Right? Because it matters more later in life than it did then. Yeah.
100%.
It's really special.
One thing what I've learned is when you learn leadership in high school, it's not just about becoming a leader professionally. It also teaches you at some point you got to be a leader in the family, when your parents get old, and you got to take initiative of taking care of them. Mm-hmm. And hospital visits, and coordinating with doctors and all that. That is true leadership, in my opinion. And when I have gone through that, I learned it. I look back to high school, and what, even when I didn't have a clear understanding of what we needed to do, you got to start with one step in front of you. And then as you put another step, then you start figuring out a little bit more. But that was something that I think is an important part, that we all have to become leaders at some point. Our parents that took care of us, we need to take care of them as well. And, I look back at my sports experience when it comes to that.
Well, I also think there is a degree to which they invested so much in us. You don't know how much your parents or other people are investing in you until later in life. This is sort of the recurring theme I think I've been saying, is like you become more aware as you get out into the world and you do your own things. And I just see how much my mom and dad invested in the world and in other people. And I aspire to give my mom, talking about planning for things, I aspire to make sure my mom really knows how her investment mattered.
Yeah.
There's nothing more than feeling like you said it, the impact.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's our job, to take that leadership role when it's your turn and make sure people feel the impact that they gave to others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Last question I want to ask you, Barb, is current students. It's great. We bring alumni back that are ultra successful in a bunch of different things. We had Mark Zarthar on over the summer, who is the chief strategy officer of the Florida Panthers. Just won a Stanley Cup. Really cool.
That's cool.
We've brought a bunch of different other, Dave Whalen, very successful in his business, Bill Irvine, and many others. What advice would you give for today's high school students that want to they have goals and they want to, chase after their professional goals? What are things, attributes, or, just any advice you would give to where they can get ahead and they can chase after those, whether it's characteristics or whether it's behaviors, what are things that you would give advice-wise to today's current students?
So one of the things that I've been in an industry where we hire a lot of different talent, creative. So I hire and work with a lot of different creatives. So that's one, like you're using a different part of your brain. I hire a lot of strategists, analysts, account managers, business people. So you look across I'm dealing with a lot of different types of skills. I've spent, a lot of my career, over 35 years, and I can tell you honestly, I've interviewed and hired over 1,000 people. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the thing I have looked for that I think that if I could give any young person some advice, is that you are never, you are never done learning.
Yep.
You should always be curious. You may think you know something, but you should always walk into everything as curious as you can possibly be about the job, about the industry. I'm specifically now talking about the hiring process and getting into the job. So I'm focused on that moment.
Yep.
And I think I would, if I could tell my younger self, like, be really curious, ask a lot of questions, show your interest in the industry you're interviewing in or the field you're going into. And the reason I say that is people who are super curious tend to be the ones that will go to the ends of the journey to be resourceful, to find the truth that is needed, to find the strategy, to keep rethinking creative, to find the solution to the business problem that exists. The people that have succeeded and I've touched every category. I've worked on automotive business, technology business, food business. I have touched every category there is, and the same thing is true. You want people on your team, and you want to work with people who are not afraid to keep going to solve the problem. And if you're curious, That's the best skill in solving problems. If you walk in thinking you know the answer, you will not keep trying to find the best solution. And that's true of any job, any function, any industry. That's number one. Number two, I really think one of the skills that is underrated is the teamwork skill we're talking about. Trying to see the other side of the table, trying to understand the other function. I've been spending a lot of my time in my job right now trying to take young people and match them up so that they can learn somebody else's job and understand, if I am building this widget and it's going to go to this team, I need to know what that team's usage is so that I can build this the best it can be. And if you can't be a teammate and understand there's other sides of the job you're doing, you cannot be the only thing that you're thinking about. You have to understand the end user, the other person building it, the other person working with it. And that team skill that I learned, I use it every single day.
Yeah.
And those are the two of the biggest. Be curious, don't stop, work hard, and also think about every person's role and how you can interface with them. Yeah. And until you understand all that, you tend to just be microscopic in a little world and you won't be as successful. That's pretty much how I hire. And I'm really proud. I think now I'm at a point in my career where my pride comes from watching the people that I trained succeed.
Absolutely.
And seeing my clients succeed. That's really, it's not about me anymore. It's really all about watching that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those two things matter. And we all are, you can only get out of things what you put into it and what you're trying to, you can be really passive and quiet and just sit back and watch, or you can really try hard to soak it up. So I just tell everybody, soak this up now while you can.
Watching your clients succeed and your colleagues succeed sounds a lot like Charley.
Yeah.
What a response.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would just say is kindness goes a really long way.
Yeah.
Kindness it matters so much.
Yeah.
Just be kind and be good. It goes so far. It's sort of the glue or the grease that makes everything else happen.
That was an incredible answer. I mean, I give that 100 out of 10.
Oh, well, thank you.
But that was fantastic. And Barb, thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation, covering a number of different topics, a really special time, really special people, in a really special place. And we are so thankful to have that opportunity to talk with you today. And we really thank you so much for coming on to tell that story.
You're very, very welcome. And thank you for having me. And thanks, honestly, to highlight my mom and dad is a really special thing to me.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to have shared them a little bit. Can I tell you the story about the Bruins with
my
mom?
Yes,
I got to tell you that
we got to hear
go.
this. Yes.
Just to wrap it up, very funny. My mom went to a Bruins game with my dad, and obviously she was into the sports too, or she wouldn't have married my dad. And this was at the time when the Garden did not have the big, I would call them lucite, but glass or whatever it was that would keep a puck from going into the seats.
Yeah.
And Johnny Busick took a slap shot, went into the crowd where my parents sat in the loge, lower seats.
Yeah.
And my mother got hit.
Oh, no.
Puck, Johnny Busick shot, hit her right in the jaw. Right here. She lost 2 teeth.
Oh.
And my mother got pulled off, to the back room where the doctors took her. And, they have doctors around all the time. So they were checking her out. And my mom's in pain. And my mom is with it, though. She's totally with it. And she was like, oh, I got hit by Johnny Busick. And she was kind of starstruck. She was like, I got hit by Johnny Busick. My father didn't even care about what happened with my mother. He grabbed the puck. He's like, I got a puck from Johnny Busick.
Johnny Busick touched this.
So we still have the puck.
Really?
My mom lost her teeth.
Gosh.
And my dad didn't even notice that. She was just interested in the puck.
What a tough cookie.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
But Johnny Busick, I mean, he's, I think, second all time in points for the Bruins behind Espo. And, just a Bruins legend.
If honestly, somebody, if you love hockey, go back and watch clips in the day of hip checks. Watch Johnny Busick.
Oh yeah,
he could hip check better than anybody. I mean, it was watching hockey back then was so fascinating.
The funny thing is too is Jackie McMullen, basketball. Known for basketball, and I see when she talks about Westwood, she talks about the street hockey back in the 70s, and that's a question I'd love to ask the the families in the 70s, this is like the big bad Bruins era, and hockey was like the big sport in town.
I played indoor hockey.
Yeah.
I played indoor. I never played ice hockey. I played indoor hockey. Loved it. I was actually good at that and field hockey. I loved that.
Yeah.
No, we grew up playing on the street or in the gymnasium or whatever. That's all we did. It was
What
never
an amazing
organized.
time, though, when you can watch Johnny Busick, Bobby Orr, John and Pie McKenzie, Jerry Cheevers, in net, and Milt Schmidt, and Johnny Busick still very much involved around the team. He was
awesome.
the traveling coordinator for the Bruins.
He's awesome.
And, just a total legend. So glad that mom was okay after taking the puck.
I should have brought the puck with me. Anyway, thank you. Thanks so very much. And all the people that you mentioned, all the Westwoodites, them and so many more, just terrific
and
people.
Also, real quick, too, your text chain. Who on your text chain do you want to give shout outs to? Because we have millions of viewers, and I want to give them their due of being a good friend that you still keep in touch with.
All right. Okay, let's just go. Jeff Sibilia played football. Yeah. Bill Gavin, great hockey player.
Still in Westwood, Bill Gavin?
Yeah.
I know his kids.
You know the Gavins?
Yeah, great family.
Well, he doesn't live there, but one of his brothers does.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of Jimmy Senior.
Robbie Carbonaro, Chris Lund. I don't know if you know the Lund brothers.
Is he out in Cohasset?
Yes, he is.
Yes, legend. Yeah.
Legend.
Trish Lund's brother.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah.
Paula Henderson, also of Sports Legends.
Does she live in West Bridgewater?
No, she lives in Westwood.
Okay,
but her name's Paula Williams. But the Henderson family.
Part of the Hendersons, John Henderson's sister.
Yeah, I was given maiden names, so you might know them.
Yeah.
Leanne Gibberti, Judy Chisano, Judy Bashan. This group of text chain, most all of them played sports with me or I followed them.
Incredible.
Yeah. Pretty great crew, pretty lucky friendships. Yeah. And to all the Westwoodites, honestly, hold it very close. You're going to run into them everywhere you go. It's a pretty special town.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And thank you again.
No, Barb, thank you. And folks, thank you for tuning in to the Wolverine Report. Looking forward to seeing you all on the next one.